Jamie Dimon warns U.S. debt default is potentially catastrophic, asks J.P. Morgan has a war room. He warned the U.S. debt default would be potentially catastrophic for the economy, emphasizing the urgency for Congress to raise the debt ceiling and avoid defaulting on financial obligations. Dimon expects panic in the markets if lawmakers fail to address the issue, leading to volatility and potential problems in both the stock and treasury markets. He stressed the need for politicians to negotiate a deal and come to an agreement. He is preparing for the risk of a default by holding regular war room meetings, which will increase in frequency as the deadline approaches. The standoff between Republicans and Democrats over the debt ceiling. Debt limit continues, with Republicans seeking spending cuts and Democrats insisting on a clean debt ceiling bill. Tom, thoughts on this?
Well, we've been watching this for several years now, and it really seems like the potentially catastrophic debt ceiling is like the latest Avengers movie. We're going to have a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of things coming on, and then someone's going to save us. One day it's Spider-Man, the next day it's Ant-Man. Maybe this time it's time for Aquaman. But at the last minute, a deal gets cut, and Jamie Dimon he has seen the stalemate now going on between Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden. And you notice that there were 3 different meetings that they had over the course of 5 days, and then it was all leaked out before McCarthy was in his limo. The White House was leaking out. Oh, McCarthy started yelling. They used the word yelling. You mean yelling? No, I mean hollering. No, Janet wasn't there. It was just they were hollering at each other, and the White House leaked that out to make him look bad before he even had a chance to get to the microphone. And I know you both follow this and know what I'm talking about. And I think what's about to happen is who's going to save it this time? And what Jamie Dimon is trying to do is push forward to get them to come together and to agree for the 14th.
Who has leverage? Who has more leverage right now? The question becomes, who has more leverage? Who truly is going to wait till the last second? Who's got bigger balls? And who is more worried about this hurting their re-election, any of that stuff? Those are real questions we got to answer.
I think right now McCarthy has cards. He knows it because it's a bigger election for the Dems because they could lose the White House that they have. So right now I think McCarthy has the ability to go that 5% further and get them to blink on his terms. But make no mistake, the debt ceiling's going up. It's just going to be what other concessions are underneath that deal. That's what I think.
What we're watching there is a marketing campaign for a game of chicken. That's what it is. You've had the 2 marketing campaigners that have come out in the last couple of weeks. Janet Yellen has come out and panicked everybody about what's going to happen if the debt ceiling doesn't get raised. She's been on every single TV station. And the next pawn in the marketing campaign is Jamie Dimon. But ultimately, I think everyone knows, American or non-American, knows that they're not going to default on their debt. The U.S. isn't going to default on their debt. It's a negotiating tactic. It's a negotiating play between the Dems and the Republicans. And I think I'm in the same camp as you, where I think McCarthy's got 5% more, and that's it. That's where it ends. The U.S. ain't going to default.
Yeah, I don't follow the politics too much. But from a macro standpoint, I don't usually say this, but I actually agree with Jamie Dimon. I think he's understating it. If they default on those Tbills, you got Mad Max.
Let me put it to you this way. I had my 2-hour quarterly meeting with my Goldman Sachs guy before this meeting. He flew in. We had the lunch at the house, and we talked about it. And their position was to move money out of certain bonds because they're not fully sure, for now, on what's going to happen between May, June, maybe July, we revisit. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Goldman's taking that position? Yeah. Why is Goldman taking that position? You never know. In the history of the last 100 years, only 6 countries have defaulted. And we've never defaulted, like Russia, Argentina, Germany, Greece, Lebanon, Greece, Venezuela. It's really, those 6 have defaulted. Okay, you guys are thinking we may be one? No, we're not saying we are. We just think we have to be ready. Okay, so then you hear, the numbers comes out on how much we have in our Treasury General account, right? Our GDP right now is $23.5 trillion, but we only have $200 billion in that account. That's like somebody making $239 a year, $239,000 a year, and you got $200 in savings. That's America today, okay? That's current America's financial situation. $200 billion sounds like a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money. But for me, this is what it's going to come down to. I don't remember when the whole midterms was going back and forth and they thought it was going to be a red wave and McCarthy thought he wasn't going to need anybody from the MAGA camp. It's like, I don't give a shit what those guys say. We can do whatever we want to do to them. And they're like, oh, that's how you talk to us behind closed doors? No problem. It's not a red wave. So guess who you need to negotiate with? You need to negotiate with the guy you hate the most. What's his name?
Matt
Gaetz. I'm right here. Let's negotiate. You got to call Trump. Last minute here, call him. He's got on the phone, all this stuff. Because Trump is a ball-busting negotiator that's willing to use the threats. Like the whole thing in the CNN town hall that he says, so, you know, when you were president, you said this. And then I was, yeah, that's when I was president. But what's the difference between now? Because I'm not the president today, right? Because he knows how to use leverage. Does McCarthy have that kind of backbone to really negotiate and get everything he wants? I don't know if he has that kind of backbone, quite frankly. Based on what you hear from a lot of different people, he's more part of the, you know, swamp camp than some of these other guys are because, you know, they're all negotiating with each other. What ends up happening here, you know, at the end of the day, of course they're going to end up figuring out a way not to default. You heard Trump said, let him default. Let him go through it. Yeah. That's the DNA of a negotiator that's willing to go all the way to say, no problem, let's go ahead and do it. Because in reality is, let's just say they do default, okay? Who loses? Well, President Biden, can you imagine? Because of Congress Congress is the reason why we default. And if it wasn't for Congress, President Biden, 100 years from now, when history books write who defaulted, no one's going to say Congress because ain't no one going to remember McCarthy unless if he becomes a president. They're going to say there was a president. They call him the worst president of all time, second to Jimmy Carter, and he beat Jimmy Carter. His name is Joe Biden. Son, 100 years ago, this guy was the president that defaulted. The concern of putting the fear on Congress should not be afraid right now. Congress should sit there and say, it's kind of like the movie Air. I don't know if you've seen the movie Air with Michael Jordan and Ben Affleck is playing the role and Sonny is played by Matt Damon. And Matt Damon sits down in the boardroom and is having this conversation with Michael and says, Michael, let's face it, no one's going to remember us. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to remember you. They're going to remember your story. They're going to tell movies. They're going to do this to you. But no one's going to remember us. We're not going to remember it. Congress is not going to remember it. President's going to remember it. Congress has to know they have the leverage. If they're able to negotiate accordingly with that, then they can get a lot of things done, especially with accountability. If not, it's going to be another, hey, we need a few more $1 trillion. Oh, okay, here we go. Can we go to the same bar together? Yes. Help me out with my re-election bid to make it a little bit easier next time in case Trump wins. That's the stuff that's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they stay strong because I think the leverage today is with Congress. It's just we'll see if McCarthy is a good negotiator. Maybe McCarthy needs to, in the next 24 to 48 hours, take a break from everybody and read a book called Art of the Deal. This guy who was a good business guy back in the days, then things changed.
Pat, you said there were
who wrote Art of the Deal? Who was
this one
Trump.
guy? What's his name? Donald Trump. Yeah,
Pat, you said there were 6 countries that have defaulted on their debt, right?
I think that was Argentina, 5 at the time.
Okay.
Argentina, Greece.
Argentina's done it 5
gotcha.
times.
Yeah.
So this is a little naive of a question because we've never done it in the United States. Walk me through what happens if we do default on our loan. Like I think Tom had a great analogy where it's almost like a Marvel movie. They come in at the last minute, but let's say there's no one to save you. Superman doesn't swoop in and save Lois Lane. What happens in America?
It's different when it's the US. So when Argentina defaulted or when Greece defaulted, okay, it's a small country, third world country defaulting on its debt. But you think about all the countries holding US sovereign debt on their balance sheets, and it becomes a cataclysmic worldwide event. And that's
bigger
why
than that. It's bigger than that.
You know what? If the US missed one payment, the discussion that he had with Goldman is irrelevant because it means that everything goes to zero. So it's not going to happen. You know what it is? It's like if the aliens invade Earth, I have a feeling that Russia and Ukraine will fight the aliens together. You know, it's that kind of like
yeah, right.
You're talking about something that's so big and so macro that if it happens, everybody will fight together to make sure the Democrats and the Republicans will become best friends in making sure that it doesn't happen.
When the aliens show up.
But,
I'm just saying.
And George, you use the
Yeah.
Mad Max analogy.
Yeah, because I think it's even so he's saying that all of these global governments have these T-bills as an example on their balance sheet. So first and foremost, you have to differentiate. Are you talking about defaulting on payments, like they just have to close down some parks and stuff? Or are you talking about default that these T-bills are maturing and they literally can't pay back their T-bills? Because those are two completely separate questions. So let's just go down that path. That for whatever reason, the U.S. says, okay, we're not paying back our T-bills. Those T-bills that you have that are maturing,
Sure.
you can go ahead and pound sand. So not only are they on the balance sheet of these central banks, but more importantly, they're the underpinning of the global monetary system. So let's go back to 2008. The problem that you had there, the main problem, is that the global monetary system was using two main forms of collateral: mortgage-backed securities and T-bills. And all of a sudden they woke up one morning and they saw, oh, you know what? These mortgage-backed securities, they're not good as collateral. They're not 100 cents on the dollar. And then you have the whole monetary system implode, which gives us the GFC. Now we've got one form of collateral. That would be those T-bills. So if you take out that Jenga piece, that's the last one. Now, and who knows, if it's one day, will that Jenga piece come out? I don't know. But you don't want to play that game. And going back to his point, which was very good, I think in that type of situation, everyone's going to be on the same side because they're going to be getting so many calls. They're going to be getting calls from Jamie Dimon.
If you're McCarthy, would you take it to that level?
Well, I don't know how much he understands the global monetary system, but he's going to be getting calls from every single world leader saying, you better do this because you don't understand the fire that you're playing with right now.
If I was McCarthy, I'd definitely play that card because, as you said, he's got less to lose because the reputation is on Biden. No one's going. You said it. You said it. Presidents are presidents because they want to do good and they want to be remembered as being presidents that do good. And no president wants to go down as the worst president in history.
Right.
And I don't think that. I think the Democrats have just got. I think Biden's got much more to lose, and I think to your point, McCarthy's got 5% more.
And that could be the risk that the bond market is pricing in.
If I have 6 bullets in a battle and you got 5, I've got more shots than you.
Yeah, but if I can bluff you to scare the crap out of you.
There's no bluff. The card's all on the table.
Well, no. So here's what's in the game they're in the world of politics, dude. The way they use ways to put the fear of death in you is very different than capitalism. In capitalism, someone's going to say, I'm going to recruit away your best talent, and I'm going to take your best customers, and I'm going to open up an office right across the street from you. We got to compete, right? In politics, you want to do that? Do you want us to release that story about you 17 years ago? Do you want mainstream media come and talk about Gina? Who's Gina? You don't remember Gina in college, second year?
Here's the photo.
Do you want me to tell you about Gina, Kevin? Oh, you forgot about Gina? No problem. Hey, keep doing that, buddy. Tomorrow, everyone's going to know about this girl named Gina. By the way, there's no such thing as a girl with Kevin McCarthy and Gina. I don't want people to put.
Or is there? Or
Gina,
is there?
right? Yeah, that's kind of how dirty
Kevin,
these
you're
guys
listening
are.
up, buddy.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happened there. The reality is, if it does, you're talking about our currency is going to be devalued. You're talking about global catastrophic events with economy. It's going to be catastrophic at the highest level. If
So I
we
think maybe
You move
Yeah.
to the next global
I think-
reserve currency real quick.
It's
I think maybe an interesting question would be, okay, let's just assume that they do fix the problem of the debt ceiling. If they extend it, then what happens? Because to Pat's earlier point, the TGA right now only has, I think it's even less than 200 billion.
Yeah.
But Janet has come out and said that she would like to see 500 or 600 billion in there. So let's assume that they get this thing resolved, and Janet Yellen goes straight out to the market and says, here's $500 billion worth of treasuries.
increased liquidity.
So then what does that do? What does that do to interest rates if there's not enough buyers out there for those treasuries? Does she scale that in? Does she issue all of the debt at the front end of the curve where there is a lot more demand? And then you bring down the average maturity of that $32 trillion in debt to, from 2 years down to like 1 year. Then they're much more, then the short-term interest rates impacts their budget, the Treasury, the federal government, much more than it did before. You can literally see them painting themselves into a corner in real time.
Let me ask you another question. If in the unlikely event that there is a default, what assets would you be wanting to hold on the day of the default?
Bullets.
Okay. I agree because I've seen this. I agree. Bullets is a great one. I see this. Zimbabwe is it's one of our neighbors. I've watched the currency go from something to zero in a matter of weeks. You want to own bullets. You want to own property because a house and a property always has value. You want to hold gold.
Yep.
And then to me, you would probably want to hold digital gold. I'm not pushing the crypto narrative, but if there is a default, then there's not going to be a default. The chance is 0.000001. You got to start thinking, what are the assets that you actually want to be holding?
But you're saying there's still a chance, though. That's what you're
There's
saying.
always a
Yeah.
chance.
Famous,
And I'm
There's always a chance.
philosopher
There's
said
always a
that.
chance.
And
There's always a chance.
I'll play devil's advocate here, and I'd say that you want to hold dollars as well.
Dollars?
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
People will be dumping their T-bills.
Okay, fine. So you're looking at the asset side of the balance sheet. Look at the liability side. So all those dollars, let's say there's $100 trillion in the world right now, which is probably a close
point.
number. Okay, so you got asset, but how did that 100 trillion come into existence? Through debt. So you still got to pay back that 100 trillion.
Fair
so even
point.
if you want to dump those, someone else is picking them up. You've still got the exact same amount of future demand for those dollars. You see, it's just like you, Adam. Let's say you've got $1 million mortgage right now. It's denominated in dollars. And you say, you know what, Pat, I really don't like what's going on with the dollar. I want you to go ahead and pay me in Bitcoin or pay me in gold or Russian rubles or the new BRICS currency. That's fine. But at the end of the month, you still got to come up with dollars to pay your mortgage. You see, and what happens is if the world economy collapses, so do banks. There's no liquidity and there's no dollars in order to pay back all of those loans that are due at the end of the month. And you have a rush to dollars and you see it spike from 101 on the DXY up to 120, 130, 140. It's almost like a short squeeze on the dollar, and that could be just as disruptive
Yeah.
as the default on the debt.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.